want to welcome all of you for joining us today. So welcome you to our special Engaged Learning Forum today, hosted by the Center for Social Concerns at Notre Dame. My name is Dave Lassen, and I'm the Community Engaged Learning Program Director here at the Center. And we're also joined today by a number of other folks from the Center that we want to welcome, including our Community Engaged Learning Program Assistant Director, Ludy McCollester. Lulu will be monitoring the chat box and other Zoom elements today, and we're really grateful for her for doing that. We appreciate you taking the time to join us for this discussion. It's meant to be highly interactive and a relatively informal event, so throughout the conversation, we invite you to speak up if you have a comment. You'll have to unmute yourself, but please go ahead and do so whenever you would like to join in. And of course, it's lunchtime, and as we've mentioned, it's designed to be a brown bag event, so feel free to eat while we talk. Before we begin, I just have a couple of short housekeeping items I want to make sure that we address before we get into the conversation. And the first is to introduce this series of special engaged learning forums. Some of you may have joined the Center for Social Concerns in the past for an engaged learning forum in our building on campus, our lovely building that's just gathering dust at this moment. But those events have generally centered around a presentation and a discussion with an individual speaker or a panel, usually over a shared meal. And we very much look forward to the time when we can have lunch with you again in the same physical space. But the conversations we have had with you and many others in those spaces have been energizing and insightful. We also recognize that stay-at-home orders and social distancing have disrupted the usual lines of communication between community organizations as well. And so while we can't meet together in person, wanted to come together online to offer you a space to share some of your experiences and best practices that will help move your work forward in an uncertain time. And I have to give a big thank you to the many groups and others that have helped shape these upcoming forums. The insight and the feedback they've given has helped us recognize the potential value for events like this and how they should function. So the focus of this and other engaged learning forums this summer is therefore to create an accessible online discussion space for community leaders and organizations to connect with one another. I hope that each week that you join us, you'll have the opportunity to meet someone new and explore potential collaborations while considering information that will be immediately applicable and useful for your work. We'll host these events at least each week through August, and we'll reconsider the forum and their use depending on the world's context and your thoughts as we get closer to the end of summer. The sessions each month will center around a common theme. In May, our theme is creative community during times of crisis. And in June, we'll focus on the technology and strategies necessary for hosting remote programs and events. As a bit of a hint to what's coming up, the first session that we'll have will be with an information technology professional from campus who will be joining us to talk through any questions you might have about how to host a webinar or a Zoom conversation, some best practices related to that. So we really hope that you'll join us for each of these events coming up. But each month we'll also send you invitations to upcoming events, and information about those events will be able to be found on the the Center for Social Concerns website in the future as well. And we invite you to join us for whatever events and topics make most sense for you. There's no expectation we have for you to join us each week. We welcome you whenever it makes most sense for you to join us. I also encourage you to invite other individuals and groups to join us. These discussions will be most useful when they include a diverse set of voices and experiences. We recognize too, though, that not everyone who's interested in a given week's topic will be able to join us. And so we will be posting summaries of each of these events on our website, on the Center for Social Concerns website, including resources related to each week's discussion. We're finalizing the landing page for these resources right now, and we'll share an email announcement with you when it launches. Each week, we'll start these sessions with a brief reflection from a community leader, and then we will move on to small and large group discussion. So as a final note, I don't know if you were here when the computerized voice said this session is being recorded, but we are recording this, so just be aware of that, please. So as I mentioned, to start with, we'd like to turn some time over to Ludy McCollester for a community reflection. Ludy is the Community-Based Learning Coordinator and Volunteer Coordinator at Boys and Girls Club of St. Joseph County. So Ludy, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself and just take a few minutes to share with us So what's been happening in your world related to communication and connecting with people while at a
So,
distance?
so I think like for a lot of you, our challenge was reaching our target audience. And for me, it's the Boys and Girls Club, families and kids. And so we went to an online forum, like virtual club, with somewhat of a format, that would follow, like a quote of a day, a boredom buster, some STEM activities, sometimes reading and different lessons and things like that. We have had a Zoom tutoring room where kids can come for help in the afternoon. So different staff oversee that. However, our traffic on that has been very low overall. What has emerged as being successful is that we've started doing like targeted Zoom meetings with, for example, on Tuesdays, we have teens at 2 on Tuesdays. So the numbers have increased with the number of kids who just kind of want to, see each other and connect with each other and staff. We, for the first time, actually had a local magician, come to the teen meeting, and do some tricks and share some tricks with them. So that was popular. But yeah, the way we've been connecting with our families mostly is direct phone calls and checking on them. And, we've done some food support and supply support to families. But generally what we've learned is how much more we need to have access to our family, to our families. So it's been a learning experience. I don't know if anyone has questions or I don't know.
I have a question. I know you're right by the YWCA, right?
Yes.
So have you partnered with them and like the school corporation that provides the bus with Wi-Fi to try to work together at all?
So I don't know the specifics on that. We were hoping to do like our own club to go bags to distribute, but it got really tricky with all what the schools were doing and things. So I know that we contacted several of our neighbors to see how we could connect that way. But as it turned out, the Wi-Fi stations are not, not part of our planning or our, planning. But we did have some staff go out and check to see how the Wi-Fi worked on those, and it was spotty. That was early on. I don't know if it's improved, but some of our staff have school-age kids, and so they were kind of checking that out. So I know there's conversations, with YWCA and some of our other groups, but that's about all I know.
So Ludy, I had a question. I know that you and I have talked before about some of the social media work that you've been doing. So if you maybe wouldn't mind sharing some of the kind of creative things you've been doing there as well.
Yeah, so we're posting all our, like I said, virtual programming on Facebook, Instagram, but we realized that honestly, this age group doesn't really use Facebook anymore. So we started reaching out with different like TikTok challenges. And those have probably gotten the most or among the highest, reactions from families and kids, just seeing staff do different challenges. They love, to see the staff that they're not seeing right now. So that's been successful. The other thing we just got, and again, this is all a learning experience, but we have Girl Scout troops at each of our 3 sites. And we just were able to launch a YouTube channel directly to the Girl Scouts that has our leader recorded really, really cute sessions for them that she's adjusted everything so it's things they can find around the house for activities as part of. So they're if they're participating, they're kind of earning their badges and loops or whatever you earn in Girl Scouts. So I think again, it seems like the targeted activities work the best. For example, the teen on Tuesdays became successful because a couple of our unit directors reached out directly to teens, like specifically to some of their teen membership and said, hey, you know, come check it out. But yeah, it's been learning and slow process, but I think we've learned a lot. So
So I see there's a question in the chat box from Dan. He says, you know, thank you for your work, Ludy. What is your plan in light of the governor's back on track plan?
Okay, so this is interesting because we have our CEO was interviewed by ABC 57 the other day. I don't know if anyone saw it, but Jacqueline Cronk announced that we're optimistically opening July 6th for like a month of summer program. And certainly that's subject to change. But even with that possibility, everything will be different. From Boys and Girls Club, national, I mean, just the guidelines of, you know, it'd be like 9-to-1 ratio. It'll just change everything. And we're probably starting Monday, right before the shutdown, we had received a restricted grant to do a huge makeover of our flagship site on Sample Street there, which is really exciting, but kind of weird to be putting that money out right now, but it's all restricted funds. So the entire inside of the building will be painted, carpeted, but also things like hand washing stations and, you know, other adjustments to make it possible to have smaller groups of kids apart from each other. So as it stands now, and right before this meeting, I received we have a meeting next week to talk about what reopening might look like. So to be determined, I guess.
So thank you very much for that, Ludy. Really appreciate the time to have kind of some prepared thoughts from a community leader. So with that, we'd like to then, as I mentioned, we'd like to have both small and large group conversations in these sessions. So I'd like to move on to some small group discussion. So if you've participated in a Zoom-based breakout session before, you'll know what the process kind of looks like. Lulu is placing you into some breakout rooms. And so you should see, I think, a button on your screen to be able to select it to enter the breakout room when you're assigned to it. And then you should see, you know, only then 3 or 4 people on your screen. So we'd encourage you to introduce yourselves to one another, especially if you don't know each other, and then take a few minutes to respond to 2 questions. So I'll share those with you now, but then those will also be shared on your screen during the session in your room. But the questions are, first, what is a challenge that you've experienced in connecting with clients and supporters during this COVID-19 outbreak? And then 2, what is a new way that you've been able to connect with clients and supporters during the COVID-19 outbreak? So we'll share those with you in those rooms and ask you to take about 15 minutes to discuss this. And then we'll give you a warning when there's about 60 seconds left. And then we'll come back together for a larger conversation for the rest of the time. Well, thank you so much for participating in that. I know in our room we had a fantastic conversation. I didn't do much talking, which was great. Learned a lot about the Girl Scouts and about some of the things that are coming up for them, and some of the ways that they've been continuing to connect with families and girls and volunteers. And you know, I think one of the really interesting things about this is how the varied levels at which we're talking about communication and connecting with people. So, I mean, for the rest of our time today, we're hoping to just kind of come back together for a more or less open conversation about these topics. Well, we'd love to, start the conversation by, if anybody wants to share some of the things that they were talking about in their breakout room to get us going again, that would be fantastic. But I think we're going to open it now to just kind of an open conversation. So please feel free to unmute yourself and share a comment. And if you wouldn't mind also just identifying yourself, your name and the organization that you're with, that would be great as well.
I can start us off. I'm Pastor Carl Hetler from Broadway Christian Parish. We do a lot of homeless work that has been considered essential, caring for people. So we've remained open this whole time, but we've had less staff because of their own health concerns or quarantine, and minimal volunteers because most of them have been elderly in the past. And so our guests have really stepped up to help do things like serve breakfast, clean showers and do laundry, stock the food pantry, pass out clothing. And so we've been trying to financially compensate those guests for helping out. And so I didn't mention this in my small group, but we got a United Way grant to be able to do that. So we got some extra money. And so it's helpful then to be able to pass that along to guests who are volunteering each day and to give them a sense of self-worth and encouragement, and hopefully start some job training with them. With that sort of accountability and responsibility has been a new thing that we've done to engage people that we are serving, and helps continue to create a two-way relationship. So it's not just a handout that our mostly homeless or transient guests are getting, but they're part of this community, they're giving back, and we're helping each other.
So thank you for sharing that, Pastor Carl. I'm curious, has this affected any of your long-term planning? Is there anything that you've maybe adopted now as a response to kind of the current conditions that you're considering maybe continuing with?
One of the things we had to do was take out half the chairs of our eating room and use our sanctuary as an overflow area for people when they're waiting to eat or when they were done eating, so others could. And so that's something that we've thought about continuing because we have a lot of space, using that space to keep people spread out. And unintentionally, the cushioned pews have been a nice place for people to rest and get some quiet sleep at times also. And so I don't know if we'll continue that because there's been problems historically in the past with that, but it has been a nice respite and a gift of grace to be able to give people that during this time that's very stressful.
Sure. Thank you for sharing.
I'd just like to go off of what Pastor Carl said. I'm Madelyn Martinek with the Center for the Homeless, so also serving a very vulnerable population. And I don't know if it's the times or what, but like our guests have really stepped up too, serving meals, helping with clothing donations. We can't accept clothes, but like helping reorganize the clothes closet we have. I mean, watching our guests step up, and by step up, I mean like really step up. Staff are not asking them to do any of these things. They just say, hey, I want to help. I know you guys are really understaffed right now. So what can I do to help you guys out? I don't know if that's our guests who being like bored or if they really want to help, but just the positivity that they brought, because we thought when this all started, our guests are going to be at each other's throats during this time, being in one building with each other, like in quarantine. But they've really just stepped up, helped out, and are really more compassionate towards each other, which has been phenomenal. So a lot of great stuff has come out from that.
How have you dealt with them adopting some of the safety guidelines like masks, gloves, 6 feet apart?
Yeah, that's really difficult, Pastor Carl, because as you know, with a lot of people experiencing homelessness and anyone else who struggles with this type of population, mental illness, like mental illness at its finest right now is happening. So a lot of our guests don't wear masks. It's more of a guideline. It's not something that's mandatory right now. But guests who want to wear them, they do. Guests they weren't very adaptable at first about the 6 feet apart thing because they didn't quite understand why. So they've gotten a lot better with that now, which is awesome. Sleeping quarters are a little difficult because we have bunk beds. But yeah, I mean, it's working out slowly. Yeah, but it's been good. So they'll do the 6 feet apart thing, but not the mask thing. I think part of the mask thing is a lot of our guests will say, well, why do I have to wear a mask 24/7 when staff goes home? They don't have to wear a mask in their own homes, but you're over here telling me this is my home. So yeah, that can be hard with the masks.
What's the?
Madelyn, can I ask, sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Can I just follow up, Madelyn? I'm Connie
Yeah, yeah.
Mick. I'm at the Center for Social Concerns. I'm the Director of Academic Affairs and Direct Poverty Studies there. Madelyn, to what do you attribute the change in attitude? It sounded like at one point they were resistant. How did you talk with folks, or what happened, do you think, to make them more compliant with those distancing and recommendations?
Yeah, I'm not on our residential team, but I think a big part of it has to do with our case managers. We refer to them as our coaches. Just continuing to tell the guests the importance of this. Also, staff setting an example. It's like, if staff are like all huddled together at the front desk, why do I have to be 6 feet apart from this person? So setting an example as staff, and then just continuing to explain to them, you know, hey, this isn't the ideal situation, but this is what we need to do to keep the whole community healthy. So really putting our messaging out to our guests as like, it's not just about you, like it's about the whole community. If you get sick, everyone's about to get sick here, and nobody's gonna know what to do, and that'll create a whole other set of issues. So just approaching it too with compassion and care and stuff like that.
No, I just want to commend you. It's amazing that you haven't had cases. And that, I mean, you've just done an outstanding job through those communications. So
thank you. And we also have a big message board too for our guests. Like, it's kind of a hub that they can look at in our lobby, so they know the most updated information, since a lot of them aren't tech savvy, so they can't just go and look it up on the computer.
Great. I was just going to ask too, Madelyn, I wonder if you could speak a little bit. You mentioned that you know, the individuals say, this is my home. You tell me it's my home, and you're not distancing or doing anything in your home. What do you respond to that?
Well, no one has said that to me, so I'm not the one responding to that, but that's more
Sure.
of a challenge that Mernita, our chief residential officer, his face. So I think at this point she's like, well, and that's kind of where it stemmed from. Well, it's your choice then if you want to wear a mask. There's only so much Mernita can do. She's everywhere. She does everything. So yeah, so I think that's kind of where the optional masks stem from, because it's like, we can't force grown adults to do that, even if it does benefit the community. But the 6 feet apart thing, they're doing well. So
I'll say for Broadway, and then Our Lady of the Road also does breakfast for half the week. We have been more stringent on the masks. The health department has given us lots, and we can launder on our site, so we can even exchange people's old mask and a clean one. And so we have both sites, we've turned people away if they're refusing to wear a mask. And we've said the health department's requiring this for coming into enclosed spaces.
Okay.
But because, you know, we're an optional service, we can do that. We can turn away people coming in off the street and say, if you're not willing to follow these health guidelines, we can't serve you for the safety of the community.
Okay.
How have people responded when they've been turned away? I think, you know, there have been news reports of conversations like that potentially even turning violent. And, you know, it's always challenging to know after the fact exactly what was said in a moment like that. But I'm just curious if you found language or an approach to that that's been more successful.
I mean, we have dealt with this with various issues, whether it's people coming to deal drugs, other people with mental health challenges who need support and a referral, and even people who are on substances, so that we have this history that if you can't follow some basic guidelines and follow staff directions, we're going to ask you to leave, but we'll be gracious and let you try it again tomorrow if things work out. So we've had to do this for a variety of things throughout our history. And so this is just another thing that we've classified as to keep the community safe and secure.
Well, thank you.
So I had the pleasure of chatting with Katrina, but since we're both from the CSD, we talked a little bit about the questions first, but then we just did some catching up. So I'm curious, kind of going back to some of the things that Ludy was referring to at the beginning, and would like to hear more either from Ludy or from some of the others. In terms of trying to connect with the families and the parents and the kids to figure out, you know, what's worked for you as far as being able to connect with them, what have been some of the challenges for doing that, and if you've thought about some ways to increase the engagement. Like Ludy, you referenced the targeted groups as being helpful, but I'm really curious to hear from the different community partners what's working and maybe what are still the challenges coming. Sorry, I'm Rachel Paraquin. I work at the CSC. I have a joint appointment with Romance Languages and the CSC, and I direct Spanish community-based learning. So I work with a cohort. There are 6 of us in Spanish that have CBL classes from the 200 to 400 level. El Campito is one of our key partners, as is La Casa and Holy Cross School right now. So that's
So
where
I can
I'm
speak
where
to
I'm
that a
coming
little
from.
bit if you want. My name is Emily. I am the executive director at El Campito, and we have been open this entire time. Child care is considered essential because we have families here that their parents are working essential jobs. We did take a couple days off for a little bit of a mental break for our staff, just so they could we could deep clean and clean up our playground and breathe. And so I would say that I was saying this to our little breakout group too. I think the part of our family engagement and the relationship that we have with our families has probably been one of the hardest things that we've had to let just kind of simmer at this time, since no one else is allowed in the building besides our kids and our teachers. Our parents are dropping off at the door. And I think it kind of just makes the relationships a little bit more strained because they don't get to talk to their teachers as much, and they don't get to see what they're doing in class. And I think there's been a little bit more of like a heightened stress with some stressful phone calls. We tried to honor moms yesterday by putting muffins with mom outside on a table with, already packaged muffins, just to say, this was one of the favorite Mother's Day activities where moms stayed in the class and got to see their kids. So I think that we're trying to be as innovative as possible, especially sharing some of the other community resources with our families. So we use the Remind app to send out messages to our kids, families. And so our community engagement or family engagement lady, she's doing every week, she's doing a conversation, like a document that she sends out. So to families with where there's appointments, like COVID testing spots and those kinds of things. So
Thanks.
I'm Amy from the Girl Scouts, and David and I had a conversation about what we're doing to keep families keeping the message out there about Girl Scouts, because during the summer is usually a really big recruiting time for us, and also with the unknown of what's coming up in the fall. So there's a couple of different layers going on, and I shared in the last call that we did, is that we are offering what's called Girl Scouts at Home, and right now that's open to anyone, whether or not they are a member or a non-member, and so it's free programming that families can take advantage of to use with their girls. Virtual meetings with their troops. It's not all of them, but we do have some leaders who have stepped up and are doing that. And then we are kind of in the planning stages of what to do as far as programming and recruitment for the summer. We have a very varied population that we're dealing with. I have 2 counties in Michigan and then counties. I have some very rural and some very urban counties in between. And so I can't just do a blanket, this is what we're going to do for every single county, because it just won't work. But we're looking at different ways of reaching people online, providing programming to just members, providing packets at meal sites, are a couple of things that we're looking at. We're also looking at a new program for our incoming kindergartners where it would be done via email, and we'd get a packet once a month. And then once things are kind of ready to go, then we would work with them on getting them placed into a troop. So we're looking at a variety of ways of getting messaging out, realizing that not everyone has access to the same resources.
Thank you.
And related to that, I was just curious if anybody else had any thoughts about, you know, offline ways of connecting with people at a distance now. Because we talk a lot about Zoom and apps and how we can get access for different people to online conversations. But I mean, Emily, you talked a little bit about, you know, muffins at the door, and Amy about, you know, packets at food distribution sites. What are some other things that you've been able to do to connect with people without using the internet?
I took part in a dog parade at one of the retirement homes in the area, where we scheduled for all the residents to be able to go to their windows, and we paraded around with our dogs and waved to all the residents. And so I have members who are there in that facility, and so it's a great way to see them and see others also. And so it was a very creative way to help people who are homebound and isolated often, and also cheer up the staff. So that was fun.
Hi, this is Dan Graff from the Center for Social Concerns. I direct the Higgins Labor Program there. I just this morning participated in graduation, I guess, you know, unexpected ritual by delivering signs to high school graduates, John Adams High School. My daughter is one of those graduating seniors. So my wife and I volunteered, and it was the full parking lot at Adams at 10 this morning, and then people dispersed in their cars. So you should see signs throughout South Bend now today with the named graduates. And that was an unexpected and unexpectedly nice thing to participate in for a couple of hours this morning. Just doing little things like that.
Kind of along those lines, this is, I haven't taken something out yet, but I was walking the dog, and we have a neighborhood park, which of course has caution tape around all of the equipment because the park is closed. But one of the neighbors set up a little table with a sign saying, you know, help yourself if you need to, and if you can contribute, please add something, and had set up canned goods and a roll of toilet paper and a Ziploc bag and various things that people in the neighborhood might need. So again, looking for little ways, even if it's right in our neighborhood, to be able to support. Another thing, thinking along the lines of food insecurity. Oops, I thought, is it off? Yeah, okay. Our neighborhood listserv, somebody had posted a few weeks ago saying that they had gotten their check from the government, but they had salaries and, you know, they weren't in need, and they were asking for suggestions on good charities, good ways to help distribute that to others. And one of the neighbors on the list, Ryan Grootman, who's with Sunchoke Farm, said, you know, I'm a bit biased here, but, you know, you could buy gift certificates for the farmers market. So you're helping to support and keep the money in the local economy. You know, they've been struggling. And one of the nice things about the certificates is the market had actually started this prior to the virus, to the pandemic. But if you go between 7 and 9 in the morning, any day that the market is open, If you buy $20 in certificates, they will give you an extra $5 for free. It's part of their promotional way of, supporting the market and advertising. So if you are somebody who supports the farmers market, or if you know other folks that do, if you can get yourself there before 9 in the morning, you can buy and then you can help contribute to others. And for example, at our church, they're giving out gift certificates along with meals, the lunches. And so it's a way to, help some of the families with that. So support the local farmers market and get some free certificates to be able to pass on to somebody else if you want to.
Any final thoughts? We're just about at 1 o'clock. I do want to say just how grateful I am that you've taken the time to have this conversation. I hope that it's been useful for you. I think this is something that we're all kind of growing into this space and figuring out how to best make it work. But I hope that we will be able to join together again, that you'll be able to join us. We will be here, whether there's one person, a million people, or no one else who shows up. Lulu and I suspect Connie and Patrina and other folks as well will be here, and we'd be more than happy and delighted to have a conversation with you and to explore any way that we can support your work moving forward. But again, hopefully this is a space where you can, community organizations can connect with one another and share your experiences and best practices there. We are, as I mentioned, we've got a set of topics identified for the next few months. But we want to be nothing if not flexible in this space. So if you have any suggestions about a specific topic you'd like us to be discussing, or a way that we might restructure this space, please don't hesitate to reach out and to let us know what we can be doing. As I mentioned, next week, we've got the rest of this month, rather, we've got topics on mental illness and on housing and food insecurity and on education. So we hope that you will be able to join us again. And again, please spread the word, bring as many other people with you as you would like. And we look forward to connecting with you again. So we are, as I mentioned, at the 1 o'clock hour. So we don't want to keep anybody beyond who has other places that they need to go. But also, if you would like to stay on and continue to talk, feel free to. Otherwise, thank you again. And we look forward to connecting with you again very soon.